We often feel like we have to perfect things in our life, and that the thing that you're working on is not necessarily done until it is perfect. But in my experience, getting to the state of perfect is often a very difficult thing to do because we always have this sort of view in our mind of what this perfect looks like, and this thing in our mind is completely different than what actually is done in paper and what you can actually do on paper. Or if you're building something, it often doesn't look like the way that you imagine it in your mind. And that is an okay thing. We just have to realize that the little challenges and difficulties and little mistakes that you see when you actually build the thing is not necessarily a problem. It's just that it is the way that you actually convert something from imaginary to the real world. So if you don't know me, I'm an associate professor. I'm Professor Dave Maslach. I'm associate professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship. And I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There were so many people who helped me out that I want to pay the favor for, to help you out as much as I possibly can. So when we imagine things, we often have this idealistic picture in our mind what this actually looks like. And it is difficult to sort of put this imagery on paper or put this imagery in the real world. And the reason is what we're trying to do is, when we have this imagery in our mind, we're trying to borrow from other things in reality, that sometimes those other things are a little bit more advanced than the thing that you're working on. Sometimes it is difficult to sort of get that idea of what you're trying to do and find the right imagery, find the right sort of ideal things and put those things together. And so we often know what we're thinking, and we often sort of have this imaginary view in our mind. And sometimes that view is, it's shaded by, maybe we're thinking it's going to be amazing, right? So we're thinking about the outcomes. Maybe we think it's going to, have accolades behind it and stuff. So again, we're thinking about the outcomes. But once you actually start processing and converting this imaginary thing, whatever that looks like, right? So some of you are doing creative endeavors at this moment. Many of you are thinking of going to graduate school. Maybe some of you are in graduate school. Maybe some of you are professors. Maybe some of you are architects, engineers, innovators, all those kind of things. And you're watching this and you're thinking, well, it is difficult to convert these imaginary things into reality. And so what actually happens is, when you are having this imagery in your mind and you're converting it into the real thing, you have to start looking for things that sort of match what you are imagining. And so the things that are in reality are often a lot different than the things that are in your imaginary world. And that conversion process is often the process of where you're converting things that sort of work in this way in the real world and putting those things together, another thing that works in that way. And so sometimes the interface of those imaginary or those real things doesn't work in the way that you thought it would work. Right, so there's a lot of components that are working together to get that thing done, right? So if you're writing a paper, for example, a research paper or something like that, when you actually go through the conversion process of, you have this great idea in your mind, then you have to figure out, well, how do I actually put it into the structure of what people sort of view as well-received writing? Or, how do we actually put it in the structure of what everybody else sort of imagines it? So there's this, not only, the interface component of it, but there's also the getting it so that other people understand what you are trying to do, because the things that we do in our life is a very social thing, right? So for me, building this reciprocity project, for example, I thought it would be this, editing platform, the sharing economy editing platform that would work as functional as some of the other sharing economy things that are out there, and work really well at the beginning. But in reality, when you put these things together, you realize that there is a lot of steps and processes to actually get there. So for me, I had to realize that I don't have the revenue, for example, is what some of these other people that have had to put these things together. There is many other sort of prototypes in the marketplace where other people can do those particular things. There's all sorts of components that are already done and already out there, and you have to put those things together. And so the reality is not going to match the sort of imagery that you have in your mind. And as I start working on these things and getting somebody to help out, you realize that the sort of components are very difficult to put together. And so the real world stuff is not necessarily what is available in your mind. And then the other component, again, is sort of thinking about, how is the audience going to perceive this thing? How are they going to receive what you're actually working on? And so that audience, often you have to coax them to the point where they understand what you're doing. And in order to get the thing off the ground, you also have to get other people on board so that they can start giving you tips and thoughts and helping you sort of weave this thing so other people can understand what you're doing. So what I'm trying to get at here is, if you're building something and you don't quite know what to do, that is totally normal. It is in the process of converting something that is a creative endeavor, something that you have in your mind. It's that process of actually getting that thing done and actually written out, whether you're writing, building something, whether you're an architect, whatever, drawing something, whatever it is, it's in the process that you actually start learning how this thing actually looks in your mind. And you develop this thing where you have this interface between the reality and as well as your imaginary views. And that's where a lot of beautiful things happen, where you learn how to actually process this and make it actually work in the real world. And that's where you actually create a lot of cool things that you couldn't have thought about before until you actually started executing and doing that particular thing. Now, it's going to take you a lot longer than you think it's ever going to take. It always does. You can imagine whenever you create something for the first time, you think in your mind it's going to take, a year, or maybe it's, a month. In reality, it's going to take 10 times as long as that. And that is okay, as long as you keep working at it and building the things that you're trying to put together. So with that, hopefully you like this message. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.